identified those guys. In Laguna Woods, California, a Chinese immigrant from Las Vegas walked into a Presbyterian church and shot 6 elderly Taiwanese parishioners. Police say he was motivated by some kind of political and ethnic hatred. And of course, most famously of all, on Saturday afternoon, a teenager in a mock military uniform walked into a grocery store in Buffalo and shot more than a dozen strangers with a rifle. No doubt you've seen accounts of this on the news. What you probably haven't seen are details about any of the 10 Americans who were murdered in that store in Buffalo. You may not even know their names, much less who they were or who they loved. Most of them were black. We know that. But beyond the way they look, not a lot has been reported about them, because the coverage hasn't been about them. Nor, in fact, has it really been about the gunman, who was an 18-year-old called Peyton Gendron. Gendron was mentally ill. Everyone around him knew that, including his teachers and the local police. Less than a year ago, Gendron was committed to a mental hospital after threatening to murder his classmates.
See, they know about these guys every single time, and they go out and shoot people, and they don't stop them every single time. That's your government protecting you.
You probably heard this document described as a racist manifesto, but that's not quite right. It's definitely racist, bitterly so. Gendron reduces people to their skin color. That's the essence of racism, and it's immoral. But what he wrote does not add up to a manifesto. It is not a blueprint for a new extremist political movement, much less the potential inspiration for a racist revolution. Anyone who claims that it is lying or hasn't read it. Instead, Gendron's letter is a rambling pastiche of slogans and internet memes, some of which flatly contradict one another. The document is not recognizably left-wing or right-wing. It's not really political at all.
But they're trying to make it right-wing and racist. See what they're doing?
At one point, Gendron suggests that Fox News is part of some global conspiracy against him. He writes like the mental patient he is, disjointed, irrational, paranoid. Now that's true, not that it makes the atrocities he committed easier to bear. If your daughter was murdered,
it's the way they're using the story.
You wouldn't care why the killer did it or who he voted for. But the truth about Peyton Gendron does tell you a lot about the ruthlessness and dishonesty of our political leadership.
Exactly.
Within minutes of Saturday's shooting, before all of the bodies of those
white to
identified
racism.
By their loved ones, professional Democrats have begun a coordinated
He's
campaign
mentally
to
ill.
blame those murders on their political opponents. They did it, they said, immediately.
Exactly.
Gendron was the heir to Donald Trump, they told us. Trumpism committed mass murder in Buffalo. And for that reason, it followed logically, we must suspend the First Amendment. That's hardly an exaggeration of what they're saying. Here's a selection from yesterday's Sunday shows.
Social media companies and law enforcement have not done enough to monitor, to ban.
That's not true. They knew. Everyone knew. See what they're saying? They haven't done enough. Everyone knew this guy was trouble, and they let it happen.
Does not protect hate speech. I'll protect the First Amendment any day of the week, but you don't protect hate speech. You don't protect incendiary speech.
They let him spew this shit online the whole time. Didn't stop him from posting on there. I post on Facebook, I'm gonna punch somebody in the face. I get kicked off for a month. These people that have been shooting people up for over a year been posting shit on all kinds of shit on social media. Nobody flags them at all. That's the fucking problem. And they flagged me for one sentence, and I'm a nobody. That's a fact. This whole fucking, you see what they're doing?
Who behaves like that? What sort of person uses mass murder as an excuse to give a campaign speech? Or
evil motherfucking people, that's who.
We'll find out tomorrow when Joe Biden travels to the scene of this atrocity in Buffalo.
And he's just going to blow it up about white racism.
But we can guess what we will hear.
I'll tell you.
Biden's approval rating appears to be the lowest ever recorded for a president this century, lower than Donald Trump's. That is a disaster for his party. The Democratic Party will suffer for this in this fall's election. Biden still has time to change course and fix it. He
Father, I pray
the lives of voters who are dissatisfied with him. That is entirely possible. That's what politicians typically do when they're down. They listen to the people who might
not him.
But Biden doesn't plan to do that, and we know for a fact because Politico has reported it. Instead, Biden has decided to attack people who disapprove. According to Politico, quote, Biden has taken to telling his aides that he no longer recognizes the GOP, which he now views as an existential threat to the nation's democracy.
See, now he's calling half the
End
country racist again.
People
Here
who
we
disagree
go.
with Joe Biden
Are
according to Joe
racist.
Biden, are now a quote existential threat to the nation.
Do you know why?
Or climate change. A threat that by definition is so profound we must declare war upon it if we're to survive.
That's all
Now,
they have
keep
left.
in mind, this threat that Biden is referring to
Is you and me. You
He's
and me.
talking about his fellow Americans.
Exactly.
No president has ever spoken like this, ever. Joe Biden does it regularly, and he's certain to do it again tomorrow. But most painful and destructive of all, Biden
I'll just turn the channel.
racial wounds.
See, that's exactly what he's gonna pour salt on.
No behavior.
He's gonna pour salt on it. Watch him tomorrow.
Politics is bad, no matter what flavor those politics happen to be.
How about our
No
CIA and
politics is better than
FBI?
any other.
Nowhere to be
All of
found.
it
They were watching this guy. Don't think they weren't, and they let it happen. They let all this stuff happen. Why should we fund them?
Race politics
They
elevates
spy
the
on
character
us
of
behind our
initiative,
back.
decency, and all the other God-given qualities.
They're a
against
bunch
every
of
person
butt
of every
fuckers. That's
color,
what they
unique,
are.
Yet morally equal to
And
every
all the
other
ones who don't
person.
tell on the others, you're
And
butt
above all,
fucking by
race
omission.
politics always makes us hate each
They can
other.
get Jeffrey
And always
Epstein
favor
in a jail
people
cell,
away.
but they can't
So let's
fix
say you were to
anything
make
else, huh?
identity politics mandatory in your country, as they have. How could you be surprised when that leads, as it inevitably will, to white identity politics? Well, you could not be surprised. You did it, and it was always going to happen. And then what happens next? Nothing good. Race politics is a sin. Race politics always leads to violence and death. They learned that lesson in Rwanda in 1994. Identity politics ended in genocide in Rwanda that killed 800,000 people. And in response to those horrors, the Rwandans did something that we might learn from. They moved in the opposite direction from one that Joe Biden is currently taking in the United States. Quote, ethnicity has already been stripped out of school books and rubbed off government identity cards, reported the New York Times. Government documents no longer mention Hutu or Tutsi, and the country's newspapers and radio stations steer clear of the labels as well. Most dramatic is how Rwanda's 8 million people now shun the identifications, the racial identifications, that seem to loom so large
That they're
10 years ago
instilling
as
in
Hutus
your
faced
children.
their mass killings, end quote. They have de-emphasized race in Rwanda, intentionally and systematically. Rwandan citizens are citizens first, members of racial or tribal groups second, or not at all. Result? There have been no more genocides in Rwanda. And that could easily be the path forward for this country.
Absolutely.
There's only one answer to rising racial tension.
We're all
and that's to
Americans.
de-escalate.
No matter what color
And
we
have
are,
done
if we're
and tried
citizens,
to
we
do
are
for
all
hundreds of years,
Americans.
which is work toward
We protect our
colorblind
women and our
meritocracy,
children
and treat
with
people
our
as human
lives.
beings created by God, rather than as
You
faceless members of
motherfuckers are
interest
going
groups that might
after
benefit some political
our
party
women
or-
and mothers,
We have a moral duty to do this
aunties,
because all people
everybody,
have
you
equal moral value,
evil
no matter what they look like.
motherfuckers.
All lives matter, period. That's not the
Absolutely.
determination of the U.S. government, that's the determination of God. And it's true.
Absolutely.
And most Americans already believe it. They'd
Absolutely.
like to see a return to the American way of life.
Absolutely.
The American way of life is meritocracy. Judge me by what I do, not by how I look, by the content of my character.
Martin
not
Luther
the color of
King.
my skin. We have
Their
a monument
critical
on the
race
wall.
theory is the exact
And yet suddenly,
opposite of what Martin
every
Luther
voice
King
in power is
tried to
leading us
teach us.
in the opposite direction. And what's the terminus of that journey? It's destruction. Everybody knows this. Only our leaders stand in the way of
Exactly.
fixing a problem that is growing worse.
They want us split and separated.
Glenn Greenwald has watched all of this. He's an independent journalist. His work is on Substack, among other places. He joins us tonight. Glenn, thanks so much for coming on. So every mass shooting, of course, is a tragedy. Every murder is a tragedy. Every death is a tragedy. But how chilling was it to watch the immediate mobilization of a political party
Exactly.
using the pretext of a killing to make baldly political points? I don't think I've ever seen anything like it.
Yeah. That's all they
Yeah,
got.
I mean, I think one of the things a healthy society does is unites whenever there's a horrific act that violates the values of all decent people. We saw that in the wake
Exactly.
of 9/11, for example, for a few days or a couple of weeks. But unfortunately, another path can be taken, and often is, by political leaders. You might remember in 1995 when there was that hideous attack on the federal courthouse in Oklahoma City. The Clinton administration immediately seized on that to say we need a backdoor access to be able to control the internet where this information is spreading. After 9/11, with the war on terror, right-wing leaders like Newt Gingrich explicitly argued we need to amend the First Amendment to control the ability of Muslim radicals to be able to spread their hateful message. So often these crises are seized upon by leaders to demand more power. This idea that, for example, the First Amendment doesn't protect hate speech is completely false.
It is false.
The opposite. But I also think that what's critical to note is that every political ideology, every last one, has psychopaths or extremists who carry out violence in the name of that ideology.
Exactly.
And to try and blame your political opponents or to ascribe fault or guilt to people who share that ideology is a completely morally atrocious act, because you're exploiting the corpses and not expressing sadness over them.
Exactly.
Shouldn't there at least be a pause? I mean, I think all of us can learn lessons from tragedy. Why do people do what they do?
They knew this guy was there.
I think that of
You
all
watched
tragedies.
earlier.
But it seems like the period
Every
where we
single
pause
time
and sadness
they
and
miss
pain,
it.
Remember, we're all united by our ultimate deaths.
But Matthew, better not
Makes us
punch
equal as
anybody
people.
in the. You
That
better not
time
say you're gonna
hasn't
punch
evaporated.
anybody
It's
in the
like
face,
instant
Matthew.
now.
You
And I
get
wonder what
booted
that
off
says
Facebook for a
about
month.
Our leaders.
These people shoot people up and say whatever they want all day long.
The rapidity with which this coordinated messaging campaign emerged to try and blame this network,
Exactly.
opponents, but also just how unanimous it was, particularly since the only thing that was known about the person who carried out this massacre was a 181-page, very densely written manifesto that, as you said, had a wide range of kind of unrelated ideas. He called himself a left-wing authoritarian on the one hand, a fascist on the other hand. There was no way these people could have taken the time to have read that, to have learned about the mental health.
No, they just want to throw the race card in there automatically.
They saw an opportunity in those corpses laying on the ground, and that opportunity was political and exploitative, and they seized on it together and quickly in a way that made clear that their concern or sadness
is
for
not
the
over the
was
life.
a complete pretense. They instantly weaponized it before anything was known.
That's how they operate.
Anyone who shows no reverence in the face of death should make.
These are evil people. They are evil. They're evil, dog.
Anyone's death.
Our media is anti-American. Our government's anti-American. They're fucking evil.
Thanks, Tucker.
Father in heaven, I take
So
them
as the
out.
usual activist.